and welcome to the Black Advancement. My name is Ajiman Jasante Goodman, and I'm your host for today. As you can see, I'm also here with Maurice Franklin, Keith Jenkins, Greg Goodman, and last but not least, Takara Mosley. And we are here part of the Black Advancement Incorporated. The Black Advancement Incorporated is a nonprofit organization that looks to combat problems within the Black community through action and dialogue. Today, before we get into our topic, let me introduce it a little bit today with the Front Street. It is no secret to any person that pays attention while attending, or a parent of a child attending a school in America, that material has been more bent to pro-privileged. Although this isn't exclusively reserved for white people, a majority of this is to the winners the spoils go type of education credits whites as fathers, mothers, and leaders of most of the achievements we as a society deem as worthy of learning. The impact of this reinforcement, to some extent, it helps out with the notion of supremacy at the very least, and at the most, it can be seen as downright the sole reasoning for the educational system being set up in such a manner. With this biased view guiding the children of the nation, the question must be asked to all children of color, but specifically for Black children: does this type of education contribute to the destruction of our Black community? And here to discuss that with us is our panel that we have for the day. So for the first question, what is the biggest lie perpetrated in American schools, and does it impact Black people? And I'll let Greg be the first to answer
this. Of course you would. You said, what is the biggest lie perpetrated?
And I'll let Maurice answer the question. I'm just playing. No, what is so the question is, what is the biggest lie perpetrated in American schools, and does it impact Black people?
I'm not sure if I can pick out one specific biggest lie. I can tell you the biggest lies all come in the history class. When it comes to the true and real history of America and how we've gotten to be in the position that we're in, and basically any history class in a K through 12 setting, they all tell half truths and really don't specifically pinpoint anyone else's history within their programs and lessons. So if you want to go back through history and when we talk about great civilizations and everything else, most of the time they'll go as far back from what I remember. They'll skim across stuff with Egypt, but then it's mostly Greek and Roman, and then all Eurocentric stuff, and won't tell the truth about where the Greeks and Romans and everybody else learned all their got all their education from.
Yeah, not just like the Egyptians are Egyptians. They're not Africans. It's like
yeah, like that. Yeah, that Sweden part of Africa at the very top.
Sweden part.
Yeah. That place where they were dark, but not quite dark, but not really Black, but you'd probably say they were Black, but we're not gonna say they're Black. That region. But
Wisconsin. No.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Wisconsin, Africa is the Egypt that they have in most of the elementary school books. But yeah, a lot of it is like I said, it's a lot of half truths, and when it comes to even modern history, like I said, everyone's been through this. They know where it starts. They'll say, "You were slaves, Martin Luther King. Good day, sir." And now they'll throw in Barack Obama. So that's about it. So and they'll always throw in a little nugget with a little piece of Harriet Tubman and a small fraction of Rosa Parks, but they never really get into anything deep. They never even get into the deep understanding of why these people are who they are and the reasons why they did what they did. They just tell you this is what they did and that's it. There's no behind story. There's no, they only give very surface knowledge of anything that is Black or African. So those are the biggest lies to me, is anything dealing with history in K through 12. I didn't go to college. Most of y'all, I'm thinking I'm probably the only one that didn't go to college in this panel. So maybe when you got to college, it was a deeper level that you got to learn to, because you get to choose your own classes and decide what you want to learn. But as far as K through 12, that's the biggest lie that I think has happened.
No judgment. Maurice, go on. Your turn.
I would say the biggest lie is that when the whole school system or the educational system tells you that you're going to get a well-rounded education, I think that as a whole is a lie. I think in the math class, they're giving you a bunch of things that really don't apply to the working world. In science, if they're telling you something, it's like Greg said, they're not giving you the whole history of who came up with these things. It's just white scientists, or this is just what you need. It doesn't really apply to the world we live in today. Maybe it did, in the 30s and the 40s and even the 20s, when there was a lot of factory work where there was some math, some skill, like some manual labor was needed. But today, I don't think that the educational system as a whole is really meeting the needs of the future of America or the future of the world. And that's why we're so far behind other countries, and why most of the time when you have these Fortune 500 companies or these massive businesses that are started, a lot of the work that's behind the scenes being done is usually by immigrants. Or the companies are even started by immigrants, because they have a much better perspective on education and learning that's outside of ABC and 1, 2, 3. So I would say that's the biggest lie that the school system is telling us. And like Greg said, history, I mean, it's a joke. But we all know that, like you said, Aj, the winners of whatever battle or wars or whatever it may be are the ones whose history is told. Everyone else's history is forgotten. But yeah, so that's what I would say.
Let me add one more thing to what you were saying about all the top level stuff being mostly foreigners, or what's the word I'm looking for? Gosh.
Immigrants.
Yes, thank you, Maurice Trump.
Whoa, Jesus. Stop the tape.
I'm sorry. But yeah, immigrants. Yeah, from what I could tell, based on the education that we receive here, you're 100% right on that. What I've come to conclude that's going on in this country, and we can see it now more than ever, is that we are teaching nothing more in these schools than mediocrity. Because at the very top levels, in most things, techs, in the tech world, and doctors and things of that nature, most of the higher levels are all immigrants, people that have studied abroad, come here. Most of those top levels that really do all the real amazing,
like innovative work.
Innovative work, yes, are immigrants. But also at the very low level, the lowest level on the things that we need for this country to survive, are also done by a lot of immigrants. So we're just all the people in the middle doing a bunch of nothing. Doing a bunch of nothing but spending money. All the very important things are done in this country by immigrants. And I think that is part of what the problem is with the education system, because we're not teaching people how to advance anymore. We're teaching how to just be worker bees. We're not teaching how to innovate and do other things. And that I think that might be a problem too. But that's all I had to add.
Keith or Takara, whichever one wants to try it first. Go.
I mean, I guess I would go along with everybody's sentiment so far. Well, at least Maurice and TJ, right? Because it says Dane in his iPad.
I stole this iPad fair and square, young lady.
But I agree. I think the history would probably be the biggest lie, biggest lie. And then, like you say, there's some half-truths and things, and I agree that you pick up other things as you go off into college, and that's going to depend on, how much you pick up will also depend on where you go to school. And like you say, what classes that you pick up. The only thing that I would disagree
Oh,
on is the idea that, you know, some of these subjects are not important when you get into things like math. And, you know, I mean, some people might think that those subjects maybe don't apply directly to the real world, but I think they may apply indirectly in a way of, you know, maybe sometimes grasping higher, you know, comprehension of, you know, maybe higher subjects and things of that nature. Like sometimes, I mean, which I think we'll even talk about maybe once you get into the second question about like the idea about oh wait, was that question 3? But there will be a question about curriculum.
correct.
And, you know, my thought, I think that the more that you teach people, I don't think that any of that can really go to waste. There's something that can be gained from what you learn. And you can't rely on the schools to teach everything anyway, especially as minorities and African Americans. Your parents need to, you know, maybe be well, you know, more well-rounded to teach you things at home that you may not get from schools. And it's more important for minorities. But I think that, you know, a lot of these other subjects are not, they may not exactly be necessary for everybody, but I think there is something to be gained from, you know, some subjects that some people might not deem as so useful. Because if you think about things like free thinking, and I think that that will often be better. I do think that having a more well-rounded education may help, you know, minorities and people from other cultures who tend to be more innovative thinking, but I think, rather innovative creators, but I think that that lends itself to being able to be a free thinker, a critical thinker. Like those things aren't, some of that can be innate, but some of that is also cultures that foster people learning things on their own and being able to, again, be a free thinker, you know. And I think sometimes if you limit what people learn initially, it's harder for people maybe to foster that among children who will then become the innovative adults potentially.
Go ahead, Keith. Is he frozen?
I don't know if he's there.
Yeah, look, no, COVID got us again. COVID got us, but also actually spinning off of that question. Actually spinning off of that question. The way that you just answered that. Do you feel like African Americans? I shouldn't say that because I don't say that in real life. Do you feel Black people? Do you feel Black people too oftentimes? They gear themselves toward the liberal arts when it comes to education? Like this is kind of a off the cuff question, but do you think that we too often we underappreciate in terms of the way that we do things educationally when it comes to the arts of science or mathematics, and we overemphasize like the Englishes and the histories and the liberal arts?
I mean, I think, I don't know. I mean, I think we're underrepresented in every area.
That's true.
Overall. I mean, I think that's really the bottom line. And I don't know if that may be where people feel like they're going to be good at something. I mean, that may be the other thing, is people feel like people want to be good at something. And if you think that science and math is too hard, you're going to go for the arts, maybe.
There's no need to get personal, Takara. No need to get
sorry?
So there's no need to get personal. I'm right here. I can hear everything you're saying.
Oh. But I mean, I think that, but if we want to talk about the lies, that can also attribute to where some of those lies have come from, right? It's not just, you know, the biggest lies I think are from history, but, you know, we have contributions in art, we have contributions in English, we have contributions in, you know, music and movies and all of those things as well, but they don't talk about any of that stuff. I mean, hello, now today, that's all we, you know, talk about, is everybody is upset about not being honored with, you know, all of the major award ceremonies that cater to, you know, Europeans. But we also have our own, but then we act as if that acknowledgement is not good enough. If it's not coming from the Europeans, well then what am I making movies for? What am I making music for? But it's like, well, maybe we should celebrate what's going on in our own community. We don't need our validation from them. So yeah. I think we are underrepresented in all of those areas. But I do think to some extent we need to get more, and there has recently been more of a push for African Americans and to be more involved in STEM programs and things of that nature, to be involved in sciences and math.
Yeah, and I think it's a product of. I'm sorry, go ahead, Greg.
Oh no, you got it. Go ahead.
I think part of it also is a product of what we see growing up. A lot of times we don't see Black scientists, we don't see Black mathematicians, we don't see Black people in those STEM professions. And, we'll see ourselves in the history books. And I think that sometimes that's kind of, I don't know, in some psychological way, that's just kind of what we push ourselves towards, because we can see ourselves as historians or as lawyers and things of that nature. But oftentimes, until recently, I can't think of many like films even that depicted Black scientists or Black, especially Black women in the sciences until like Hidden Figures. And it wasn't until then, and once they really started peeling back that layer of the contribution that Black women had to the space race and all of that stuff, like I think you'll have a generation of Black people that start to get more into that because they can see themselves doing that. So I think that a lot of times we will push ourselves towards industries or professions or even degrees in which we can see ourselves, if it's been a neighbor or a person at our church or whoever it may be. But if we don't see ourselves in those industries, then a lot of times we don't believe that that's something that's attainable for us.
Do you have something to add, Greg, or you want me to go on?
I was gonna say basically the same thing that Maurice said, and also that when it comes to Blacks being a part of the more of the art side or liberal art side of things, that is also important. But the narrative that we write with those stories is what's important, because if we write those narratives correctly, we can influence people to want to do the math and the science and everything else. So I think both are equally important. But right now, if that's the direction we want to go, then we should force the art to make, because we follow what we do as artists. So we'll follow the art. If the art is pushing you towards, you should try science, math, and so on and so forth, people make stories like that and tell those kind of stories, then I think we could get into that zone.
Yeah.
So I think it's a delicate balance between what the art represents and how we will project ourselves forward. So the art does have something to do with it, and it's a very important aspect of it, because that's what tells our story.
Okay, interesting. Hey, guy on the couch, we want to hit a good stopping point, I think, for you to interject with something from the website. What you got?
All right. Question number 1. What is the biggest lie perpetuated in American schools, and does it impact Black people? Rob Cole says, Blacks painted as slaves and largely irrelevant in history. It impacts Blacks by relegating them to the sidelines of history and leading many to believe that the fortunes of Blacks have been largely a byproduct of the goodness of white people as opposed to their own power. Mm-hmm. Also, the bad done by the U.S. is severely downplayed or non-existent, misleading people to believe that government has your best interests at heart. Back to you.
I mean, doesn't it always? So let's see if does anyone have anything to respond to off of Rob from the website?
I mean, I would agree 100%. I agree. Even with everything that's going on now with the, Black Lives Matter, I think it's a good time that, we should be talking about these things. I mean, we should always have been talking about it, but I would agree that, that again, like you say, the bad things that white people have done, that Europeans have done has completely been minimized. And, and then Black people have been marginalized, basically, when, we have not been acknowledged. However, if you think about the Jews, the Holocaust is very much recognized, but it's like we have the African American History Museum and, the Smithsonian in DC, but I still feel like they want to change the narrative about what happened. And now that we have the Black Lives Matter, somehow they are taking that narrative and I think changing it before our eyes. And I don't think we realize, I don't think people are really seeing that. I mean, they joke a lot about it on Black social media, but I'm not sure people really quite understand what that means. Is that, now, I mean, Colin Kaepernick lost his job, and, but now they are kneeling and wearing kente cloth. I mean, it's just, it's sad. It's really saddening. But it just does not help Black people be able to, again, be a free thinker, form your own opinions, to be an innovator versus a worker.
Anyone else? Greg, Maurice?
No, I agree with everything.
Yeah.
I think he was spot on. Good.
So keep informing me that he's going to try to jump back in here. When he does, I'll double back for him. But until then, let me go ahead and do some plugs for the website, which is www.blackadvancement.com. When you get to the website, there's several different things that you can do, such as a research section. The research tab basically helps you in debates such as this, where you can, if you don't feel like you have enough background knowledge of something and you want to be involved in a conversation, but you don't feel like you know exactly what's going on, we have a research section where we try to pull stuff from a lot of different opinions in a lot of different places for it. Also, what we have is a topic section where we basically come up with topics such as this one and other topics. And this is not just something for our organization. This is something that anybody is free to give us as far as topics go. And lastly, for this section is events. We do several different events, bar mitzvahs, block parties, all of it, baby, all of it. We're a nonprofit. I mean, we do whatever we need to do. So anyway, with all that being said, we have Keith rejoining us, and we're going to give him the first question again. Hey, thanks for blessing us with your presence.
My phone overheated, so I apologize. But I wanted to keep it basic and more rudiment to the first question than what everybody spoke to.
Okay.
I look at the largest lie that they taught us in school. If you start from the basic fabric of when you were in preschool or kindergarten, the first thing and lesson that they were all teaching us was Pledge of Allegiance. They taught us to praise and worship and be all about that flag, right? And for those of us that are non-white skinned persons, that is against a lot of, it's against everything. Because now you see how times are now where people can't even listen to or hear any other dialogue without pulling out that flag and say, no, you're an American. It's about this. It's a piece of fabric, bro. It has no significance. And then another lie that was told to us in regards to slavery in history was, or maybe it was just omitted, slaves built this country, but they give recognition to the forefathers of this country of coming up with, devising, creating, starting. When you look at slavery and this initiation in 1600s, or as things were really starting to pick up from the 13 colonies into a progressive America, these people have been stolen from lands all around the world to come here and work and build for white men. And those families have generations and generations of levels ahead of everyone. So the fact that you omit, hey, we stole people from all around the world and they built the country and we were just in charge of them, and we did it, they did it for free, and everything that we did, we gained, we capitalized on, and now, hey, you got it, man. Start over. You can be rich too. We're all closer to being broke and poor than we are to ever being rich, all based on those two things.
Hey, well said, man. Well said. I'm gonna go into the second. Yeah, I'm gonna go into the second.
Most of what's in the Pledge of Allegiance is not true for us.
Absolutely.
None of what's in the Pledge of Allegiance is true for us. None of it. Not a syllable.
It's interesting. We actually, the guy who wrote the Pledge of Allegiance is actually a mall that we all have,
Yes.
probably Takara, have grown up and gone to, which is Francis Scott Key in Frederick.
Well, I got mine
and that
because
in
I was stealing
itself
from
is
that.
it's a travesty. Like, we grew up in the area where the man who wrote the Star Spangled Banner and the Pledge of Allegiance is like, all of that shit is a lie. and we still hold our kids accountable. Well, I don't, to learn it. And I tell my children now, I say, don't say the flag, don't say the pledge. And if your teacher has an issue with it, I'll be happy to speak with them about that. But I refuse to allow my children to continue. We didn't know any better, and our parents just were trying to do the right thing. And I believe that our parents didn't want to ruffle the feathers. But I'm going to shake the whole bird. So.
Well, I will say this: the first person actually to really fully protest against doing the national anthem were the Mormons way back in the day, because they didn't want to pledge allegiance to anything except for God. So that's a interesting fact that a lot of people don't know. I'm gonna go on to the second question, and you guys can answer in whatever order you want to. Actually, whenever the thing pops in your head, and you guys can decide on your own order from there. Should teachers be given more freedom to craft the curriculum, or would you rather there be a universal curriculum for grade school?
So,
What was the question? You broke up.
Oh, I'll do one more. Hold on. Should teachers be given more freedom to craft a curriculum, or would you rather there be a universal curriculum for grade schools?
I would say a universal curriculum. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Nah, go ahead.
I would say a universal curriculum with more input than just one demographic. I think if you create a universal curriculum with enough representation of the true United States, then you can get kind of a fair, equal, and balanced education. I definitely would never want my kids in a classroom with a teacher who's just doing their own thing. Because, you know, I live in Virginia, and even though it's Northern Virginia, it's still Virginia. And then others, of course, are living in the deep South, where it's even worse. And we hear stories, you know, all the time about teachers who are doing insane things that are racist and all kinds of other stuff. And so, you know, you get one of those teachers teaching history, you know, it's gonna be the whatever that what a general Robert E. Lee was he trying to sell right after the Civil War.
Those were people.
The lost cause.
The lost cause. Yeah, that'll be history today. You know, it'll just be the lost cause all over again, and they'll just be continuously selling that and teaching that to our kids. You know, we'll never be able to break that cycle for some areas. So yeah, I would definitely prefer a universal curriculum with input from everybody.
Yeah, I'd agree too. It has to be universal. In elementary school, especially, it would have to be, because that's, you know, you don't know what the background of that teacher is completely. So all the crazy little theories that he or she could have that are be sprinkled into your child it's just not even worth the risk. At that age and that young, it has to be something that's universally taught, because at that age there are things that you're going to have to universally know in order to make it to the next level anyway. So they have to stick to that script, if you ask me, of something universal that everyone's going to need in life. All the elementary school level that's where you build the foundation, and you can't have someone sprinkling in their own crazy theories into a foundation that needs to be solid for the future. So I'd say you'd have to have a universal. If you want something different, I mean, there's always private schools and such, but as far as public school, to me that's how it has to be, in my opinion.
Takara, you were mentioning this question actually in the other question, in the first question. So I'm interested to see what you had to say.
I think I agree with universal to some degree, a universal curriculum, but I think that there should be room for, again, some free thought. I mean, because what the whole subject that we're talking about is, the issue with, the lies that our teachers taught us, and, the education system in America as a whole. So, maybe, I mean, I think there should be room for teachers to adjust according to, the students that they have in the classroom, and then maybe being able to add something. I mean, I agree that we need to keep an eye on, making sure somebody's not going rogue as far as what they're teaching, in schools. Maybe there should be some board, or, there things should have to be, like, if you do want to, add something, that's something different that you want to add to the curriculum. I think there should be space for that. And maybe there should be like an approval before you teach it. But I do think there should be some room for that. And that maybe, if you have African-American teachers, maybe they would teach more African-American history in schools outside of Martin Luther King and because that's the fundamental problem, is that, we get a white curriculum from white school systems. So, I mean, how do you change that? Maybe allowing teachers to have some room to make some changes. Because all white people aren't bad. All of them are, some of them may want to teach, some Black history and, maybe promote other things that aren't included in the curriculum. I mean, we know that it's not a great idea to teach, well, now we only speaking about grade school, but, just teaching kids kind of, universally is not the best thing. I think there should be some foundation of universal curriculum, but I just think that there should be some room for freedom.
Okay, I agree with you to a degree. I think the free thinking aspect should be later on, once they get all the basic stuff down. Once you get the basics down, that's why I think it should be universal, because everyone's going to need the basics. And I feel like once they get the basic down and they have an understanding of the basics, then they should be free to think when they get a little bit older. And then the free thinking process should be a part of that. So elementary school.
Start that earlier. Free thinking should start earlier with children.
Well, you probably know better than me, but I guess it would depend on what you meant exactly by free thinking.
Well, again, I'm thinking about the idea of like that most people are taught to be employees. And I think you guys are absolutely right when we're going to even talk about the question when we get to the next question about indoctrination.
Boy.
That, like you say, how he talked about the Pledge of Allegiance. And I mean, I think that all of this like you say, it starts early and it teaches people to be employees versus teaching people to be, I can start my own business. I can be an innovator. I can do something different. I can go, I went down the fork in the road and I went straight. You don't have to go left or right. And I think that sometimes when you don't allow for there to be some room for change, which is the one thing in life that's inevitable, it unfortunately will lead to that idea of like maybe indoctrination and kind of teaching people like this is where things are going to go. But I do agree. I just think there's some room for both, and there should be some checks and balances. And I could go down a long, rabbit hole about how that should look. But I just think there should be some room for a little there. I mean, I think there should be a universal curriculum, and then there should be space within that curriculum for some freedom.
Okay, fair enough.
Something different.
Fair enough, because I was thinking that once you get to a certain age,
Mm-hmm.
you should be able to start that free thinking process. I think I would say like maybe preschool through 3rd or 4th grade. Once you get down all the basic math and writing, reading, and all those things, once you have those things mastered, then you can think about what you can do with those things. That's all. That was the point I was trying to make. But I agree that there needs to be more free thinking. I just would like to know. It's interesting to try and figure out what age that free thinking should begin.
I mean, I agree with Takara, and if I mispronounced your name, I apologize. That should start at preschool. I mean, I think you should be, you should start free thinking immediately. I think, I mean, even as your kids start, or learning how to walk and talk and do all that stuff, like you want to encourage free thinking to some degree because you don't want to stifle, their creativity and their genius that they do have. But I think there is a fine balance between establishing a universal curriculum and allowing free thinking. If it's a 6 or 7 hour school day, you can definitely do 3 or 4 hours of foundational education and then still allow another 2 or 3 hours of free thinking, if that's through the arts or through some kind of creative class or whatever it may be. I think that could maybe be more at the school, at the state level of decision making, or even at the local level as far as in that county. But I think there just are some things that um, you have to universally teach. And I think as the kids start to get older, I think once they get towards high school and things, you can kind of teach them some of the darker sides of history that may be a little bit more difficult for a younger kid to understand and rationalize. But you do need to create that space for both, for free thinking and for foundational education.
I think, honestly, I like both ideas and both thoughts. I think for me, more so that one, Maurice, you mentioned the fact that you're in, Virginia. I'm in Charleston, South Carolina. So this is like the major slave hub of the country, at one point. So I think there's tons and tons of rich history. And I think one thing that Charleston does well is they don't run from it. A lot of times they don't like it, but it's talked about. And at the younger ages, it's something that is kind of, it's kind of sugar coated, and it's not that harsh reality that we all expect and to hear, or that each of us knows. But I think there needs to be parameters so that you can give a teacher leeway to say, kind of what you're saying as far as, okay, we have the basic principles that need to be taught in schools. We have these foundational learning that we need, but we also have, you can't go outside of this and start doing your own thing, and you can't go way up here, depending on whatever that age group is. So we want to make sure that we keep age appropriate. So first elementary, you introduce these things, and then when you get to middle school, and you start to talk about it. Now, you always want to keep that free thinking, but you don't want to, you don't want to stifle that child, but you also don't want to overwhelm them to the point where they're just thinking about, the death and the killing and the murders and, the beatings and things like that happen throughout history when you introduce, something like slavery. So, I mean, it's a big mix of things that could go into, a universal versus, education versus, and foundational and giving that teacher free will, things like that.
So I'm hearing a lot of give and take in terms of looking at it from both ways. Let's see what the website has to say. Guy on the couch, what did you pull from the website that can contribute to this conversation?
All right, question number 2. Should teachers be given more freedom to craft a curriculum, or would you rather there be a universal curriculum for grade school? Black Droog says yes, but the only way that can work is if you have diverse teachers who actually care about the job and care about actually educating students rather than just pushing them through the system or chasing test scores. This can be very valuable if the teacher is committed. Regardless, it should be a collaborative effort with oversight from parents. No one group or individual should have the power to make that decision. Back to you.
That's a good point, right? I think you look at like the people like within the past few years that are educators, they genuinely, all across the board, I think they genuinely care about, like, everyone knows that there's no money in education and in teaching. So the people that are there, they want to do it and they want to be helpful to the child. But a lot of times you got educators also that they just don't know certain things themselves. So it comes with that diverse aspect to be able to give to the child.
And if I may interject, Keith, yeah, that has been terribly shown through this whole 2020 episode of racial uprising, in terms of what some teachers do and don't know, and also the ratio of the racial makeup of teachers in these grade school levels. I digress. I'm going to go back to the panel talk. Anyone else have anything to say after Black Droog's comment?
No, I'm good.
Yeah, I mean, I like the point of getting the teachers involved in creating the curriculum as well. I mean, that starts a whole nother issue of trying to get people involved in their local Board of Education meetings and all of that and design. But yeah, I think that would be something good. You create parameters and then you let the local community kind of decide. And if you have a strong Black community, or even if not, if you just have one or two people in that community, you know, I think that they should definitely be advocates for those history lessons, those science lessons, or those things that are pertinent to Black history.
Yeah, but if you don't live in a pertinent Black community or a prominent Black community, and you're a Black person that has now moved into that community, and you've allowed the community to have a voice of what can and can't be taught, our history is lost and forgotten and never spoke of. So we got to be careful also of what we may say, who we want to introduce things, you know, as far as the community is concerned.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
I mean, yeah, everything is going to need parameters, regardless of what you do. You gotta keep some tracks for people to stay on. Otherwise, they get out of control.
I don't see that at all. So I'm gonna go ahead and plug the website, and I'm gonna go ahead and plug the website, www.blackadvancement.com. Another thing that you can see on the website is our debate section, where we basically do stuff like the roundtable, such as we're doing right now. You can go in there and see all of them, except for the last one, I believe, which I'm going to be putting up there pretty soon. Recommended websites. We also do a thing where we promote all Black-owned businesses. This time we're highlighting Janet Lee Jewelry. She's home-based out of Houston, but she sells it, I think, online. They've been rocking with us since like the very beginning. So shout out to Janet and all that she does. Book of the month for this month that we're going to highlight is Lies My Teacher Told Me. Everything Your American History Textbook Got Wrong by James W. Lowen. That's actually a pretty famous book that I had to read in college myself. It's really good if you ever get a chance to go ahead and read it. Last but not least question for this roundtable is, do you believe the American school system is meant to indoctrinate children or to educate them? And Takara, I'm gonna have to ask you to go first because you keep stealing all of my lines by telling people what the next question is. So you're gonna have to go first on this one.
I think it was probably intended to educate white people, but unfortunately a lot of that curriculum has left out, you know, the cultural diversity needed when you're teaching children of other races. So then that leads to how much are you actually educating versus how much is this, you know, like you say, indoctrinating people. I mean, I think that overall education in America lends itself to people to be workers versus innovators, which is, I mean, that's an issue for me. That's why I'm somebody who tends to be more, I lean a lot towards fostering free thinking, critical thought, you know, things, you know, educate with, and not letting the system, the school system, or, you know, America teach your children as your responsibility as a parent. Regardless if you have formal education or not, you still have value in what you can teach your kids at home versus what, you know, schools teaching. You can build upon that. You can say, okay, well, these things happen, but there's also other things, you know, there's other parts of history that they don't talk about in school. Those things start at home. I mean, even if you get into, I mean, we can even take it back how he talked about rudimentary stuff, not even just the Pledge of Allegiance, but, basic things. If you're going to talk about sciences and, children who are into maybe more, like to get children involved in STEM programs, I think that you need space for that, because that's why we're lagging behind other countries. Those things aren't fostered here until people get into higher education. It's kind of like you say, basic, like pass these tests, and it's like we shouldn't really be teaching just test taking.
We can wrap back around to what standardized testing means to the Black community in a minute. Anyone else have something to say about this question?
I think it started off as educating. I think that was the initial plan. Or maybe not, I don't know. But I think I definitely think there's more indoctrinating than anything. As we've said, a few times here today, just the way that history is taught, you're not really taught the truth. You're just taught to accept somebody else's perception of the truth. Yeah, somebody else's view. And somebody else's view of America instead of the truth about America. And we're just taught to accept what we were told, and never really shown how to, as we said again, to really be thinkers and to come outside of that box and to assume or to challenge things that we hear. And some of the things that we're taught, we're really just taught to accept what we're told. And so we never go back and do our own research. And so you're really just pulling somebody into, I guess, being a sheep than really being educated. And so, I don't think that, especially today, like we're not taught, we're not expected to start businesses. We're not expected to innovate. We're just expected to go work for GM or Disney or whoever it may be. But nobody ever talks about the post office. But nobody ever says, go out and become the next Walt Disney. Start yelling Kanye rants and stuff all over the place. But nobody says to go out and be the next that person. They just say, oh, go out and work for that company. Go out and try to get a job on Wall Street and not start your own brokerage firm or something like that. And so I just don't think that I don't know if it's an expectation of Americans or what really the goal is at this point. But I definitely don't think it's education anymore. And if it was, you wouldn't have to mortgage your future just to get an education.
Wow.
I think,
to quote a famous person, there's always WOIC at the post office. Go ahead, Keith.
I think you look at, I'll take Takara's point of it started initially to educate. And I say that because guess who wasn't in school when these things started? So you look at how things have progressed and how, hey, that Negro can read. Why are you reading? How'd you learn how to do that? Now you get to the point of, wait a minute, he's a professor, he's got a PhD. Let's discredit his school. Let's discredit his education. So we're marginalized at every turn of everything that we've ever done. And we always, which is the saying, you got to be 2-3 times as good to be considered equal. And white people may never know that, may have never heard that, and may never understand that. But that in itself is why a lot of people are protesting, because we just want equality. And you look at how things are with where we're coming from, and as far as, with the job scenario, it's, they feel like we're taking all their jobs when, hey, actually, I've been performing far greater than you've ever performed, but I'm still getting paid less than you in a minimized role than you are. So the school systems have always been set up to indoctrinate versus to educate, and especially for us. You look at us in the school setting, and if I'm me, use me as an example of a child in school, I want to talk a lot, and I've got a lot to say. So if I'm talking, hey, he's a troublemaker, get him out of here. Now, how can I be expected to learn anything if I've missed half of a lesson?
Yeah.
And it's perpetuated through every school system throughout the country of our children. Whereas if it's a child of another race or color, they get the benefit of the doubt. Or it couldn't have been him talking because we know that he is a good child because he's white. So, I mean, it is what it is. You gotta call it what it is, man. And a lot of people, they're gonna ignore it, and they're not gonna accept it because they don't see it from the other side. They only see it through their lens, and you can't. How can you acknowledge something if you don't see from another perspective or another lens? So,
yeah, no, it harkens back to the conversation we had actually a few weeks ago on Black grade school teachers, where they hit on that. Well, actually, Greg had hit on something on that, and not to take from his point this time, but he was saying about the racial. We had discussed kind of the racial makeup of what most grade school teachers' race is, which is white women, and the opposite of what that is what is a black boy. So it's like how that dynamic plays out in itself. So, yeah.
So I mean, it's hard, and it's hard, again, to the first point of the first question, as to we all want to be better than what we have, and we all want to grow, we all want to develop, we all want a piece of something more. But how can we get there when the wealth is spread so thin? We're not in a position to leverage anyone to get anything. And when we do, it's a rat's nostril full of it. So what, can't go but so far.
Yeah, I don't do follow-up questions. Greg, did you have something to contribute to this one?
Oh yeah, I can make this real quick. Of course, it's all indoctrinated.
Okay.
From the ground up, 100%. They want you smart enough to do their work, but not so smart that you'll go off on your own. That's all they're looking for. Period. They'll educate you smart enough to get done the horse shit that they need you to do, and no more. That's where they want you. They want you to think on a certain level and not go any further, because all those spots that are going to go further are not even based on your education. Those are all based on who you know. So the whole system.
That's Billy's brother over there. We're going to give him to him.
Exactly. So the whole system is set up for you to the whole education process now is for you to just continue to keep someone who's rich, period. And I'm done.
That was very succinct and it hurt my feelings. Go ahead, Maurice.
No, I was going to say it's very similar to, I guess, how the military is. You're only to know what you're told. And then everything else, you're not told that. So there's that whole chain of command thing to get to a point where it starts to kind of, I don't want to necessarily say limit power.
No, it does.
To some degree. Yeah, so it limits it. And you're really looked at negatively if you ask your superior any questions. You are not to ask any questions. You are just to, be a good soldier, do what you're supposed to do, or do what you're told. Or they put you out. And it's the same thing that happens in class. It's the same thing that happens at work, where you're not expected to ask your boss any questions. You can't question your boss. Like, they're never wrong. Your teacher could never be wrong. And, there's no, go ahead.
And there's several cases where you are right, and then they will they'll tell you your idea is boo-boo, then use your idea and cut you completely out of it. You see, the whole thing is just set up. I told you, all they want you to do is know enough to do the work. That is it. They don't care about anything else. And the whole system is set up based around that. That's why we're losing in this country on a whole. That is it.
I think things would be different if a majority of Americans knew the truth.
Exactly.
They don't
The
want to know.
balances of power would be completely different if people knew the truth.
I don't know about
But
that. I don't know about
I think
people here.
it
Oh
would.
yeah, I
Ignore
agree.
it.
I agree with you, Maurice.
I'm not saying that he's wrong. I'm saying that people hear the truth all the time and they ignore it.
No, that's because because
hear it passing.
they know that truth is going to destroy them and their reality that they have.
No, I don't even think it's
Exactly.
that. I don't think that because they've been told the lie so long that the truth sounds like a lie, so they don't even believe
Yep.
the truth when they hear it.
Yeah.
That's how it's set up.
They
So
think
they're
the
not-
truth is far-fetched.
Yeah.
They're like, no, there's no way
It's
that's
so
true.
far-fetched
It's
to
like,
them.
no, it is.
If you want to get someone to know the truth, you got to make it sound like a lie, then they might look into it. That's how messed up things are now. So,
Yeah.
good.
Like somebody has sent a meme or something like that talked about all the different things that happened in 2020.
Oh yeah.
And if this was 4 years ago, you wouldn't believe, like you could rattle off the things that happened between January 1st and February 1st, and most people would be like, yeah, right. There's no way all that stuff happened in 30 days.
Yeah.
And then you look at this year and you're like, no, that actually happened in 30 days. But it gets worse. It gets worse. And they're in the history books, you probably won't hear about any of it except for maybe the coronavirus. That might be all that you hear.
I don't think so. I think this is going to be a long chapter in the history books.
2020 is going to be its own class.
You know what? And I'm sorry to take this off of the education aspect because we went down that rabbit hole, but you remember how we all looked at George Bush and how we said, man, this guy really blew it and he messed up with FEMA and his response was poor, how mismanaged he was and how awful it is. You compare that to this now, and it looks like Bush acted immediately. That's how awful. That's how awful this is.
I'm gonna go to the guy on the couch because I don't want to get canceled. No, I'm gonna go to the guy on the couch because I want to come back to this conversation, but we can get into that for sure. Guy on the couch, what you got for the third question?
All right, question number 3. Do you believe the American school system is meant to indoctrinate children or to educate them? Ken Seward says, indoctrinate, ? I thought only socialist societies brainwash people. Schools are designed to provide the students with the skills needed to survive in a very competitive world. More instruction needs to be taught on privately owned business development. Bottom line is that inner city schools controlled by Blacks are failing students. Back to you.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? Bottom line.
Oh, guy on the couch, go ahead. Repeat the last part, please.
Sure. Bottom line is that inner city schools controlled by Blacks are failing our students.
Yeah, because there's no city government and there's no city officials and no board of education in these large metropolitan areas that aren't white people.
Like that's absolutely ridiculous. So that's like saying, and Takara, again, I believe you. I don't know if you're a teacher. I'm not sure what your profession is, but let's say
professional. She's brilliant.
No. So let's say just to that person's point. So they're saying in Baltimore City, we've all seen The Wire. You're talking about, truly, you're talking about the revenue and the taxes that are coming in for that county or whatever, the city and the county kind of all together,
right?
Or the state. We can even talk about just the state of Maryland. That money isn't going to Baltimore City. That money is going to Montgomery County, parts of Frederick County, and then even once it gets to those counties, it's dispersed differently. Where certain parts of like Frederick County, Montgomery County aren't getting the same revenue as other parts of those two counties. So for this person to believe just because there may be a majority Black city, potentially even a Black mayor, doesn't mean the state funds that are coming in for that school system are going to that actual school system for that mayor. They may only get access to a small fraction of it.
Exactly. There's no money going in there. And not every inner city school's got a Joe Clark around the corner.
No, they don't, and they don't want a Joe Clark there either.
Oh, they sure don't.
His Black ass is getting out of there as fast as possible. They don't want someone like that that's going to teach the kids how to really manage and control in society.
Yeah, like
Right.
it's just
Right.
that person,
That's
whoever
when
that
you
was,
get into the school, the prison, like school to prison pipeline with school systems, which is another issue. There's a book by, I believe it's a white woman, Ann Devereaux, I believe. It's called Notes from the Field. And it was a play. And I believe it's on HBO, actually, like a special on HBO. But the book talks about how the school systems, as Keith was saying, like white children who make mistakes, it's a mistake. Let's help that child. But Black children and minority kids are turned into the villains, and they're punished. They're not helped. They're not given resources to, improve their lives and see if we can, help this child because they have some, emotional problems, or, they come from an impoverished, low socioeconomic status. Those things aren't, that thought isn't even there for us versus as it is for white kids, It's such a big, and here's the other thing. It's a huge problem. It's multifactorial. There is no easy solution. There is not one solution. And the trouble is, it's like, where do you even begin? That can be overwhelming for people who have basically been indoctrinated and not really educated. And, we expect to change, Black people, but they can't really think past oftentimes their immediate needs, because we're often, as we have talked about on this call, in low socioeconomic status. We're thinking about shelter and food.
That's
and
exactly right. You've got a whole set of things.
You're not even thinking about, what did James Brown say years ago? Open the door, I get it myself.
James Brown reference. How about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, and it's a song, but it's like, this is really not new what we're talking about today. This is not new. But somehow it's like it skipped a generation or something. It's like they don't realize that, which is again another thing back when we talk about educating people. Sometimes education is just by stories that your grandparents told you. That's lost. We're not having, where families are, like your grandmother, your grandparent, like, it's kids raising kids, and we can't challenge the status quo if everybody just, people really cannot see to think outside of the box to begin with.
Takara, you said something that has been tried and true as far as revolutions throughout the years, and that is revolutions cannot start with the lowest class, because they simply are just trying to get by every single day.
Yep.
Revolutions to start with people of a higher education class, and not necessarily a higher brow or education class in terms of them being smarter, but them having time to sit back and assess the situation and debate on how best to combat the situation.
Exactly. And it's good that we're having this conversation today. And I'm really happy about what you're doing with the Black Advancement, Aji, because people, they just will hear things better from us than they're going to hear it from white people. Because there are white people who believe that Black people deserve better and that the law should be changed. I mean, if we want to talk about breaking the wheel, who is the only candidate who is really talking about breaking the wheel? It's
Bernie.
Phil Stein. I can't even think his name.
Bernie.
But nobody will vote for the man. It's like,
because again, his philosophies are too far-fetched.
There you go.
It's like you said, it's like a lie, right? Nobody believes him because
nobody believes it.
Don't make sense. Oh my God, it's the most frustrating thing. Is like, if you really want change, the only person who really is talking about a radical change in America to level the playing field is him. But somehow, nope, we're going with Joe Biden.
I want to talk about that after I stop recording. So
right. But that goes back to what Keith was saying about, and really everybody on the call is saying about all of you guys, how you guys are talking about. Like people can't even understand, like they have been told lies for so long. It's the idea of not having that free thought. They can't think outside the box to think about how to advance and change and challenge the status quo. It's like, well, what do you mean? What is that?
I think, you just got to look at everything that's going on with our, I'll say for what state are you originally from or lived in when you were?
I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, but I live in Baltimore.
Oh, perfect. So wonderful. All right. because we all have multiple friends, I'm sure, from Cleveland. So for so for Odds, Maurice, myself, Greg, TJ, we were in. I mean, those three were overseas, but we had a Frederick County public school education, and in Maryland is always ranked as the top or among the top schools in the country.
Pretty high.
And our county always performed above the national average.
Yeah, that's also true.
And I will bet that all of us were told, man, this is as good as you're going to be. This is the best you're going to get. You're not prepared to go to school. You can't go to college. You won't be successful. It's going to be hard. You're not going to make it. And voila, like here we are. So,
yeah. I had a guidance counselor tell me or ask me, he was like, "You're applying to go where?" I was like, "College at Hampton." He was like, "Nah."
Absolutely.
Like,
the only reason why you're ever going to go to school is because you're an athlete. And if it wasn't for that, you'd need to get a trade because you're not smart enough to perform at the college level. And I'm certain in Cleveland, you all had it far worse than we did.
Well, I will say that like I did not when I disappeared from high school after I came back from my freshman year, I went back to visit a couple of teachers. And people were like, "Where have you been?" I was like, "I was at school." They was like, "Oh, you was at FCC."
Man.
It's not a shot at the that's Frederick Community College, by the way, Car. And it's not a shot at any community colleges, but it's just like that's how some people dwarf you just based on what they believe, as opposed to what you are. So
yeah, they put a metric on us as you're not going to be successful. And I did the same thing. I went back to my teachers and with my grades and said, "Hey, you said I would never." Here you go. Have fun with that.
Yeah. That was not my issue in grade school, actually. That really became more of an issue in my career and in graduate school. That was really when I experienced, that racial tug, of people trying to think that, like trying to tell me where I was going to be. But I mean, by that time, it was kind of like, well, look, I'm not, I'm here now, so I don't understand what you mean, but, okay.
Your chance to discourage me was 10 years ago. It's too late now.
It's like, oh, okay. But I do remember the choices that I made with schools. Well, also to my parents, my mother, made the effort to send me to magnet schools, and neither of my parents went to college. So I was sent to magnet schools where you do get a level of a different kind of curriculum, and then those children are held to a higher standard, as far as education. And when I went to high school, I went to where I had a lot of Black teachers, and me and IG, we talked about this before. Like I had Black, I had
Black teachers.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I did. I had I had Black teachers for physics. I had a Black teacher for pre-calculus. I had Black teachers I had Black teachers in, I think, like AP English. I had an African-American teacher in high school. So, my experience was different, but then I was still white educated for undergraduate and graduate school. That is where it came, where it was, and nurse managers. I'm a nurse practitioner, actually, in psychiatry. And then when I went to graduate school, and even in my first job at Johns Hopkins, I've had really supportive, administrators and bosses. And then I've had other ones that were like straight up racist. And I had those people in school. And it's funny because one of my professors in college, now I have an adjunct professor position at Hopkins, but when I was in graduate school, she did not believe that I wrote my, published a paper to graduate to get my master's.
Conversation.
She literally did not think that I wrote that paper.
I remember that conversation.
Right, but the way that I dealt with it is probably completely different. She sent me a whole paragraph basically accusing me of not writing my paper, and I replied with maybe 2 sentences. I did not have any help. And I wrote the paper. I did not have any help, and that was the only thing I responded to her, because there's really nothing else to say as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. But I got my degree. I have a very successful career, And I share that story with people because no matter what somebody else tells you, what you do with that information and how you choose to live your life is still up to you. No matter what anybody wants to tell you, or, you know, like basically no matter what somebody else tells you or tries to impose on you, you have the freedom to live your life and have your career the way you want it to look. You go where you want it. That's my thing. I don't go places I'm not wanted. I want to work somewhere where I feel like I'm part of the team. I mean, I'm usually the only Black person, and you know, that's what it
I think
is.
that's all of us.
But right, exactly. You know, I mean, that's what it is. But whenever I have the opportunity, I do like to tell young Black girls and men too, you know, there's more that you can do. You know, there's other things you can do. What do you want to do? Like, I don't even know if people are really asking, if their parents are even asking these kids these things. Like, okay, if you want to cut hair, okay, well, what else do you want to do outside of that?
Right.
So, or, you know, do you want to just be a barber, or do you want to own your own barbershop?
Own
When
the
you
barbershop.
have employees, I mean, there's so much.
Levels to it.
There's a lot of room. There's a lot of room, and I just think that those things should be fostered. Like, there's so many. It's a lot to do, and influences come from more than one place.
Greg, I'm gonna give you the last word, and then I'm gonna plug, and then be good. Do you have anything else to say on this topic?
Nah, we're good.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Greg. That's great. Great input.
Yeah.
So last but not least, the last and final plug for Black Advancement is donations. After all, we are a nonprofit, so if you have a chance to, please donate to us. Actually, our running books are on the website, and they get updated pretty frequently, so you know how much we're spending and what we're spending it on. Black People You Should Know is also a segment we have on there. One of the people we're highlighting this time is Mary Elizabeth Bowser, who was born in 1839, but they're not sure exactly when she died. What makes her so special? She was a Union spy during the Civil War. This was a Black woman who was doing that down in Richmond in the house of Jefferson Davis. So if you don't know who that is, you can look it up. Last but not least, we are a solutions-oriented organization, meaning that we try to come up with things to combat the problems within the Black community. When it comes to the role of education, one of the things that we are looking to do is possibly start different programs such as Black male subs, where we encourage Black people with certain qualifications to become male substitutes within the school system. So that way they have more Black faces and representation there. And that can make a big difference for the students of color and all students, honestly. Also, something like handing out workbooks and getting school supplies for kids, so that way needy families won't have to do that and worry about having to get those supplies themselves. So that's one of the few things that we do as one of our solutions. Even though it's small in the grander scheme of things, it might be big to somebody. So with all that being said, I'd like to thank everybody for coming out. I'd like to thank the panelists for having such a great discussion. Thanks everybody for watching. You can follow us on Facebook at The Black Advancement, Twitter at BA Inc. 44, on IG at BA_Inc_44, or the website, which I've said several times, but I can say it again, www.blackadvancement.com. Until then, people advance. Does anyone have any shout outs?
Yo, I implore everybody to get a yard flag, Juneteenth yard flag. Hang it up, put it in your yards. I'll show you the picture and the link of how you can get you one. I did it.
Indeed. Yeah, that actually is good. Shout out to Hampton University. Go ahead, Maurice.
Oh, no, I have nothing. No shout outs.
Fantastic. All right,
shout out St. Aug, baby.
Yo, there you go. Thank you, everybody. And I will talk to you guys right after I stop recording.